So if you actually then just say, well, let's measure the temperature of the Earth for the last 30 years, it has gone up on average by 0.28 degrees. Now, I hope I'm not sounding like a climate campaigner or a green tree hugger. I'm really just trying to show you data that is irrefutable data. The planet has heated by 0.28 degrees in the last 30 years. It, in fact, has got colder in the last 10 years, a fact that many climate deniers would point out. But broadly, so we're conceiving the problem is that there's gases in the atmosphere and somehow they're increasing the temperature. So what are we going to do? We're going to have a meeting about it. We're going to go to Copenhagen next week. None of you could have noticed the fact that we're not having this meeting next week, COP15, occurring in Copenhagen, where we're hoping that all of the governments, senior people in the government, hopefully the presidents and prime ministers will be going to Copenhagen, and they will be doing some sort of deal about gases in the atmosphere. What they're not doing is taking you or me to Copenhagen, and they're not taking manufacturers of devices to Copenhagen. So those of us who, if it is the problem, conceive the problem as gases in the atmosphere, those of us who actually make devices and use them are not going to be there. Governments are going to be there. So you might start to think in this C.D.I.O. idea, oh, hang on a minute, if that was the problem, is a governmental arrangement the solution that we want? It might be. Here you've got local government. Ken Livingstone, bless him, February 2003, implemented congestion charging in London. And I live in the congestion zone, and I'm bound to say it has reduced the congestion where I live. This is an early picture. It's now 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. rather than 6:30 p.m. But there's a congestion zone. And what effect did that have? This is irrefutable data. This is the data that came out. This is measurement of the atmosphere in London, emissions in London. And what happened when the congestion charge came in is that nitrous oxide went down 13%, CO2 went down 16%, and particulate emissions from diesels went down by 15% in the first year. And then in the second year, it went down further when people realized, penny dropped, oh my goodness. So we've got an 18.6% in nitrous oxide, 17.3% in CO2 and so on. So there we go. Bit of government, had a government meeting in Copenhagen. Ooh, bit of congestion charge, good idea. Reduces the emissions. Why don't we all do that? Well, here we are in Manchester. 84% of people in Salford voted against the congestion charge in Manchester. In fact, there's no district that thought it was anywhere near. I mean, if these are election results, I mean, you'd shoot yourself. 16%, 17, 18% of people in favour. And yet, clearly, having a congestion charge improves global, your response to global warming. Therefore, people do not see, 40% of the people in Salford do not see that climate is even changing, and a further 50% don't see that it's a particular thing they can contribute to. This is a cartoon. I pick all these things up off the internet. This is a cartoon about Thanksgiving last week in the States, where the idea is that you shouldn't eat meat anymore. You've heard this from the chief scientific advisor. Meat actually gives off more emissions than if you're a vegetarian. So there's a sort of a move towards vegetarianism as part of a carbon reduction. And the dog at the bottom here seems most concerned that we've got a vegetarian future. If you look at the newspapers, and it was on the radio this morning because the director of this institute in the University of East Anglia has now stood down on the fact that these emails about climate change were intercepted, and somebody used the word trick in their email. Those of us who've done experimental science use the word trick every day because we want to convey what we believe to be what the data is showing. And the fact that it was warm in 1300 is not relevant to the fact that the CO2 levels and temperature have changed in the last 100 years. And so you do not show world temperature data from 1300 to the current date. You use the trick that you only show it from 1800 to today. The reason it was warmer in 1300 is due to solar activity, volcanic activity, that is different to what it is at this time. So there's an idea, there's a scandal going on in the Times, whether you believe Rupert Murdoch or not, but the Times. You can buy any number of books in the railway station saying this is all hocus pocus. And in fact, lots of people, including Lord Lawson, Nigel Lawson, the ex-Chancellor of Exchequer, writes books on this sort of stuff, and they sell very well, and he makes lots of money from it. 99% of scientists think this is wrong. The Copenhagen summit itself next week is struggling with the fact that the public are tired of all of this sort of stuff. It hasn't particularly got any warmer, although I must say Salford this morning was very sunny. It hasn't particularly got any warmer, and therefore this must all be hocus pocus. So we've conceived what the problem is, gases in the atmosphere. We've designed a solution. Governments are going to get together and make some laws or do some different activity to solve that, and it isn't working. However, there are some solutions out there that are working. This is the British Wind Energy Association. And this is the status of wind energy here in the UK, where 6% of UK power now could be produced, if the wind blew, by wind turbines. That's reducing the UK emissions of carbon dioxide by 4 megatons, over 4 megatons a year. The UK emits 650 megatons of carbon a year, so 4 is not a huge amount, but at least it's moving that way, and their 2 million home equivalent could be have their energy supplied by renewable energy. You'll also be familiar, again, this is all from the internet at the weekend when I drew this together, 10 new nuclear power stations. The Institution of Mechanical Engineers, I should mention that more often, has suggested we need 20 new nuclear power stations by 2050, but Ed Miliband, the Secretary of State for the Department of Energy and Climate Change, says 10. At least 10 is better than naught. And so that's and whether you like nuclear waste or not, and very few of us would like nuclear waste, it is absolutely irrefutable that nuclear power produces low carbon energy, which is a good thing. Produces waste, which is a bad thing, but depending on how you work out your priorities, this is a good way of reducing the atmospheric problem. And finally, here is an example of a combined heat and power plant in Birmingham, where if you build your own power station and sit on top of it so it keeps you warm as well as lights your lights, you can actually save a lot of money. And so £5 million in a hospital with this 1 megawatt combined heat and power plant provides them not only with electricity but also hot water. And that is a economically sensible thing to do, something that Salford University may have done already and certainly might think of doing. Other universities are thinking of doing, where your demand is sufficient. You meet it from your own needs, and then you get all of your heating for more or less for free. When you have a power station by the coast, it just heats the hot water and fish enjoy it. When you heat it in Salford, people enjoy it. So there are some operating solutions that are changing the atmospheric composition. So let me come back to what I've tried to make there, that whether or not it is your love life that you're trying to conceive, design, implement and operate, or whether it's your response to global warming that you're trying to do, or indeed the Institution of Mechanical Engineers Design Challenge 2009 that you're trying to win with a large cash prize today. This is an excellent way of thinking, and when things don't work, you just go back and say, maybe I conceived the problem wrong, maybe I designed the solution wrong. Good luck to everyone.